John G. Pennington, and welcome, my friend, to another edition of Remember when we sit down and visit with folks and talk about the great things in Newport, Arkansas. John G., how are you, my friend?
Oh, fine. Doing fine, D. Thanks.
We got Freeman Travis, the Warrior, our guest this time.
Big fan.
Yeah,
I'm a
big fan of Still Win.
Yeah, I played with him too. One time Freeman and I and Doug Adams and I think it was Justin Rutledge, a couple more. We played at the prom in Bradford.
In Bradford, yes, sir.
Played at the prom, and we were playing along there, and something happened, and the electricity went off. Lost all the power. And they just kind of looked at me, and I did a drum solo for about 7 or 8 minutes, man. I lit them up.
You didn't need any electricity
then
for that, did you?
Then the lights came back on, went right back into the song we were playing, just like nothing. Everybody thought, I never knew that song had that long of a drum solo in it, but I'll never forget that. But,
the Remember When program has been a real good program for us, and it's, you guys are the lead sponsor on the program at George Cal Motor Company. Lots of things happening at George Cal Motor Company, my friend.
Oh yeah, busy. Everybody's going back to school. People trying to get their cars serviced and all that. Getting ready to hit the road, go to ASU games, Fayetteville games, all those, and the Greyhound games. Got one coming up here on this new field. Man.
Yeah, we film on Thursday night, and Friday night's the big night. Yes, sir. Yes,
I'm telling you, I can't wait. To watch us play and watch it be on that new field. Mike Brandon and I went out on that field, walked around, and I said, "You want to run a sprint?" And he said, "No," and I said, "Good." But anyway, it's
just didn't happen, did it?
Freeman Travis. I talk about Remember When. I love Freeman Travis. Every Friday night, I was always real superstitious. And every Friday night, we'd sit there before the games after we got dressed, waiting to go out on the field, and we'd talk about just the same thing all the time. You think we can do this? What do you think about this? He'd always answer it and we went through it we went 10 times.
Is that right?
Every single time. And
Pretty
of course,
successful.
we went 10-0 that year. And I always said part of it was because Freeman asked the right questions every Friday night. Well, I love him to death, and he's a great guy, and this Remember When's a great program. It's just really neat. And we're proud to sponsor it. And we want to invite all of our customers. And if you're not a customer of George Cal Motors, come visit with us, see what we can do. You'll love our service. You'll love the way we do business. We don't have a bunch of games and gimmicks. I said not long ago, if you come into the motor company and you see coats and ties and shiny loafers and people talking in kind of funny accents, you're not at George Cal Motors.
Wrong place, aren't you?
Come on to George Cal Motors, or look at our website, georgecalmotors.com. Shop, find the one you want, do a credit app online. You don't even have to come look at our ugly faces if you don't want to, and I don't blame you for that. We'll make it easy for you. You'll love doing business with us at George Cal Motors.
Hey, there's no doubt about that. We thank you guys for being the lead sponsor here for Remember When. It's a great program. Freeman Travis is the guest, as we say. He and Bud Black sit down and talk about there's some old radio guys right there.
Boy, aren't they?
Guys have
You bet.
Yeah, they had done a little, hadn't they?
You bet.
John G., thank you, my friend.
We appreciate you doing it, and everybody watch it. Warrior, you'll do a good job.
Cut! Get on in here, Benny. Make sure you cut this out when they curse.
You knew Mike Allen died this morning.
No, I didn't, but I knew. Yeah, okay.
He died this morning.
Jackson's Funeral Home and the Jackson family have been serving our friends and neighbors in Jackson County during some of the most difficult times of their lives for nearly 60 years. As the third generation of this family to own and operate Jackson's Funeral Homes, Jan, Rhett, and Jerry consider it the highest honor to be chosen to care for you and your family during times of need. We believe the highest standard of care is achieved when people are given the tools needed to make the most informed decision for the benefit of their family. For us, there's no greater honor than to care for our friends and our neighbors in their time of need. The Jackson's Funeral Homes, the 1900 block of Malcolm Avenue in Newport, phone number 870-523-5822. Hi, everybody. I'm Bud Black, and welcome to Remember When here on Cable 15 and our website, cable15tv.com, and Facebook and YouTube. A lot of ways you can access this program, and we're pleased to be able to bring it to you. Thanks for your comments about all the shows we've done so far. We're going to continue our program. Last year, we during football season, we didn't do this show, but we're going to just barrel right on through with this, along with football season. And speaking of football, my dear friend and lifetime friend, Mr. Ed Freeman Travis Jr. joins us. How are you, sir?
Doing great, bud. How are you?
The Warrior. We all had nicknames in high school. Now, this is the Warrior, and I guess he was always there in the forefront, leading the charge. We have so many great stories to talk about in the 60s. But first, I always start every program by asking my guests, where and when were you born?
Well, it started on a crisp January afternoon in 1952. I was born right here in Newport at Harris Hospital, which was, of course, downtown Newport at that time, to Buddy and Doris Travis. And a lot of people still remember Mom and Dad. Have an older brother, Mike, who was about 11 years older than me.
Yep.
Molly Travis McGonigal now, married to Daryl McGonigal, lives in Tuckerman.
Long time. Yep.
And my other sister, Becky Travis McCartney, who's married to Jimmy McCartney. A lot of you remember her from the elementary school for years and years. So was born here, lifelong resident, and lived in the same house my whole life.
And about 90% of the people that ever went to kindergarten in Newport, Arkansas, down through the years, went to Miss Doris's kindergarten.
A lot of people will remember Miss Doris's kindergarten. Now, it actually started as a kindergarten, and it was about, I think, if I remember, around 62 or 3.
Yep.
There wasn't a state kindergarten. There wasn't kindergarten in the schools. There had been a kindergarten before Mom had it. I think Miss Martha Wise had a private kindergarten, but it started on our front porch with, I don't know, there's probably 12 or 15 kids. And Mom had that kindergarten, and as it grew, we had to add a room onto our house, actually. And most people will remember the fire engine red house over on Leona and Bowen Street, and that's where Mom's kindergarten was.
It's just a landmark of growing up around here in the second half of the 20th century.
It was, and you know, I still have people today come up to me that went, even after it was a preschool, but they still say that that Miss Doris, my mom, was one of the best teachers that they ever had, and it was kindergarten, but it was an institution, that's for sure.
I had and still have a great affinity for your father. I just thought he was a great guy.
He was he was an engineer, so he kind of always had that mindset, but he had one of the most dry sense of humor that you've ever seen. He was a great singer and dancer. I remember when I was a kid going to the Service League Follies over at the high school, and Dad would be in there singing and dancing, and I learned some of that from him. My mom, on the other hand, you know, every town's got a character, have characters, and Miss Doris kind of was one of those characters. So I kind of got that little cynical edge from her.
You cynical?
Yeah, well, you know, I've got to say, and there's, you know, my dad taught me the difference between right and wrong, and my mom taught me which one to use when I needed it. So that's kind of the way I look at my mom. But Dad was just a good man. He really was.
Do you remember how we met?
Yeah, and I think that's probably part of my problems that I've had over the years anyway. We met, I was probably, we've talked about this before, I was about 5, so you would have been 7 or 8, depending on what part of the year it was, and we were at the bowling alley.
Bowling alley just opened.
The bowling alley had just opened up here. There had been a bowling alley at the air base at one time, when it was a base, and I, for some strange reason, walked up behind you, and you were getting ready to roll the ball, and it didn't go forward, it went backward and hit me in the head and knocked me out. About 5 years old. That was our first encounter.
I've been trying to make it up to you for the last 60 years.
You have. I'm not sure how well we've done with that, but the therapy and stuff has worked over the years, so I think I'm probably all right.
It's a good way to meet somebody. Hit them in the head with a bowling ball.
And become best friends over the years.
Boy, we certainly have, and we have had some wonderful moments together and wonderful moments in Newport, Arkansas. Freeman and I have been great friends. We've been through the happiest of times. We've been through the lowest of times together. Freeman and I both got in the broadcast business early in life.
Very, very early. You wouldn't probably do that today at the ages that we are, even though A lot of broadcast now is automated, and kids, younger people are a lot more attuned to technology and computerized. Back then, when we got into it, you had to do everything. You gathered news, you read the news, you know, read the meters, you did engineering work if you had to. And at a young age, it was pretty unusual, but we had some pretty unusual people teaching us too.
One, I'm jumping way ahead here, but a story just hit me. Freeman and I was a teenager, late teens. I actually was going to school at Arkansas State. I was working at KRLW radio in Walnut Ridge for the summer. Mm-hmm. And Freeman came up and started helping me broadcast American Legion baseball games, because one summer we did 100 games.
A lot.
Yeah. And on a Friday night, Freeman and I had stayed out a little too late, and we'd had too many Pepsi Colas. And who's looking around? We had to get up and do a doubleheader the next day. So we went out, and we were both a little, shall I say, draggy. And we went out to get ready. It was 104 degrees, you know, and we had to hook up. You know, you had, back in those days, you used just a phone line that you hooked into with clips, metal clips. I said, Freeman, get us hooked up over there. He went over, came back and said, no, it's all messed up. It won't work. And I said, what's wrong with it? He said, trust me, it's messed up. We can't do the doubleheader today. So we went back and got some rest.
We didn't do the doubleheader. However, there was a time where we did that, and we did the ball game. I think it was in Paragould, and we were never on the air. We did an entire 9-inning ball game, baseball game. We'd called, and they said, yeah, it's right, it's fine. But they tried to get a hold of us to let us know that the phone line
had gone dead.
Had gone dead. They failed to call the police or anybody to send over there to tell us. So we do a whole 9-inning ball game, and we're never on the air.
In those days, that's what you did. You know, you warned people, you know, look, if we go off the air or something crazy, you know, somebody contact the police department and send a messenger out here to us so we can see if the problem is down here on our end of the broadcast or if it's back at the station or whatever the case may be. We have so many stories to talk about, but let's get back to growing up, and because like I say, you remember Newport, Arkansas, like most of us do. Tell me about some of the things that really stick out in your mind about Newport and growing up in the late 50s and through the 60s. You graduated Newport High School in 1970.
Yeah, I was thinking about that for the last couple of days when I knew I would be coming in, and I thought about what a great opportunity we had to grow up in the time that we did. Mm-hmm. We came along right after World War II at the end of the 40s and the first part of the 1950s. So there were several eras of things that happened that we grew up in. There was that end of World War II boom in the 50s where things grew. Then you had the cultural and social revolution of the 60s when we were still in high school. We were seeing all of these things and living through these things ourselves.
Yeah, we were part of it. Well,
and then as the 70s came on, you had that, what a lot of people would call the Vietnam era, but it would be the dissident era. So there are all these things that were going on, and we lived and got to see all of these changes. You know, we've got technology now. Kids grow up with a computer and iPhones and tablets and all that. And of course, we saw the advent of all those things happening. The space race that gave us the computers and things like that. And growing up in a town like Newport, which was growing at that time, we got to see all those things and live through all of these major changes in a short period of time.
Yeah,
it was wonderful.
Real quick, we're going to take a break. A recent college graduate and I were sitting down and talking, and I said, would you grab a stamp and put this on, drop it off out in the mailbox for me? He said, well, where do you put a stamp on it? And I said, well, the other side of the return address. He said, what is a return address? Mm-hmm. A college graduate, I'm telling you, never had use since snail mail.
Right.
Everything was email or text or just, you know, and I will never get there. I'm 64 years old, and I still do snail mail, and I've never sent an email in my life.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get to it here in a minute, but growing up, there were so many opportunities for kids jobs and things like that, a lot more than there probably are now. So growing up, I always had a job. I mean, I always had something that I was doing, making money. I don't think we got enough time to go into, I mean, we can here in just a minute,
Yeah.
but talk about some of those things. But in Newport, there was just great opportunities for kids to learn skills. And some of those things that I did then served me well as
Sure.
I got older. They were skills that I learned at 10 or 11 years old.
And I'll tell you why Gene Howe would hire 2 high school and junior high kids to go to work at the radio station right after this time out. We're visiting with Freeman Travis on Remember When.
Jackson's Funeral Home and the Jackson family have been serving our friends and neighbors in Jackson County during some of the most difficult times of their lives for nearly 60 years. As the 3rd generation of this family to own and operate Jackson's Funeral Homes, Jan, Rhett, and Jerry consider it the highest honor to be chosen to care for you and your family during times of need. We believe the highest standard of care is achieved when people are given the tools needed to make the most informed decision for the benefit of their family. For us, there's no greater honor than to care for our friends and our neighbors in their time of need. The Jackson's Funeral Homes, the 1900 block of Malcolm Avenue in Newport, phone number 870-523-5822.
Freeman Travis is our guest on Remember When. The late Gene Howe hired us first, and then we worked later on for Al Evans for many years. But Gene came to me and said, well, yeah, I'll let you do some ball games. He said, I can't pay you anything, but you'll get good experience. I said,
We had good experience for several years, if I remember correctly.
And then I remember Al came in and said, look, you don't need to be working for free. I'm going to pay you $5 a game. Well, now look, $5 wasn't bad. You know, well, I mean, and hey, and I was like giving $2 of it to Freeman.
That is true.
Yeah, that's you know, hear those stories. Well, I worked for 50 cents a day, but we just about did, because there were some days that we did those long double headers. I got to Walnut Ridge later when we were older, and you know, we were getting paid more in line what you needed to be paid.
Well, the way all that started, you had actually started doing basketball with Gene. And you talked me into, at some point in time during the season, to start keeping some stats. And I was just sitting in the stands watching the ball game like everybody else. I would keep stats, and during halftime, I would come down and read those stats because you were doing the ball game. And that was really my first time doing sports on the radio. I wasn't doing the game other than just doing that and coming down at halftime. Actually, the first time I was on the air on the radio, I was, I don't know, maybe 5 years old or something. Gene Howe had the Man on the Street program, and I sang, I don't remember what it was, but Mom was there and said, he'll sing for you, come here, you know, kind of one of those kind of deals. And I sang on the Man on the Street program, but that was the first time. But Gene had a lot of confidence in us, and he probably just tired of doing it.
Yeah, he wanted somebody to do it.
Yeah, and then he came late after that had gone on for a little while. Of course, as you said, we never got paid. No, we did too. At Christmas, we would get a gift certificate to PK Homes Men's Store.
That's about $10.
For about $10.
You're right.
That was it. So they finally did pay us after a couple of years. But I remember the day. I guess must have been Mr. Guthrie, the principal of junior high, came and got me out of class. I thought, well, okay, you know, I was used to that, so I wasn't that worried about it, but I didn't know what it was. And he said, I need to get Bud too. And I went, well, I know it's going to be bad now. Bud and I both are involved in it. But got us together, and you came up there, and Gene Howe had come, and I think you told the story when you were on the program doing it. He came, said that he couldn't be at the ball game. You were going to have to do the game, and we would have to do the ball game. I was going, oh wow, this is crazy, because I'd never done it. You'd been. So we show up at the game. We got everything set up. I didn't know you had to do commercials. I didn't even know you had sponsors. I was just showing up to help you do the game. So we called the radio station. They said, what do we do? And they said, well, he always just does them live. So we wrote down the sponsors of that ball game, and we did the commercials live. I'm not sure. They stayed on for the next ball game, so I don't guess we did too bad as well. But we didn't know. I was probably 12, 13 years old when that happened.
We were fortunate to broadcast games in an era where basketball, the Greyhounds had just won the state championship in '65, and so there was a tremendous amount of excitement. There's always been football excitement, about the Greyhounds. But the basketball team in '65, really for the next few years, it led us to having a lot of excitement. The team didn't win as much. Now it's 69, 70.
69
Butch Duncan semifinal team, and a basketball team that throughout the year wasn't that good. And then sort of just gelled at tournament time.
It really did. Cersei beat them in the semifinals of that season. Again, thinking about this, people who know that we have done sports together and did for a long time, because they are so familiar with that 1981 state championship season, think you and I did a lot of football together.
Yeah.
We didn't.
No, one short period.
2 years was about it. 2 seasons was all, but we did hundreds of basketball and baseball games together. Right. And I think it was the baseball that really made the chemistry that we had gel, because you just have to continue to talk. I mean, you're doing a monologue for 3 hours. Yeah. And I think that's probably where that came from.
And we didn't do a lot of football together because, despite what people think, this old Bud did football for 50 years. Well, not always here. I didn't get on the air during the mid and late 60s. I was playing football. It's hard to broadcast when you're out there playing offensive tackle.
It's difficult.
It's really difficult sometimes. That guy's knocking you in the head. It's hard to say. I just got knocked in the head, but we made 4 yards. But my first football game was a game between Marianna and West Memphis. My senior year, I was able to do that. They called me and said, "You've got an announcer over there." Bud Black said, "Can you send him over here to do a football game?" We had an open date. It was like the first week of the season. The Greyhounds had an open date. I was on the team. I told Coach Counts, I said, "Can I go do that?" He said, "Well, sure. We're not playing that night." He said, "Go give us a scouting report on them." I went over and broadcast Marianna and West Memphis. They played to a 6-6 tie. I came back and told Coach Counts, I said, "2 worst teams I ever saw, we'll kill both of them." West Memphis beat us 42-7, and Marianna beat us 42-6, I believe.
Right, yeah.
So I gave a great scouting report. But after that, for a couple of years, did some football, and then moved to Forest City, and you headed out. We're all going different directions, and in Jonesboro, and then you and I would meet back up, and we were back together in Jonesboro for a while, and then we both lived out in Forest City for a while at the same time. It just
I've been very fortunate to. Of course, I know when I was in the 10th grade, that senior year that you're talking about, that you were, I did the ball games. I did color and stats for Gene Howe for when I was in the 10th grade for that whole year. So that was really my first full year of doing that. But after school, I've been able to. And I did play-by-play after I left here, and been fortunate enough to be on the broadcast team of 3 state championship games. 1972, 81 here, and then 90, I'm going to say 5, it was the year that Pine Bluff won 3 in a row. McClellan down in Little Rock. But the 72 game, I was doing football for Jonesboro, and started the year with Randy Hankins.
Yeah, the classic guy. Who is Craig O'Neill, for those of you
Craig
who don't know?
Craig O'Neill now, and he did the first ball game, which was against Batesville, and then I came back, and I believe it might have been North Little Rock, somebody. And then he left, and Bill Little and I did the rest of the season. But the state championship game,
best game ever played,
was Jonesboro and Hot Springs. We went down there. It was 35 degrees. It started raining just before the game, and by the middle of the first quarter, you couldn't tell one player from another. They changed jerseys at halftime, and at the end of regulation, the score was 14-14. Back in those days, there was no overtime like they have now. It was sudden death. We'd already played a full ball game. We played 3 additional full quarters.
Yes. Not one overtime.
Not one
period.
overtime. We played almost 2 football games that night. And after that next year is when they instituted the overtime
For safety.
For safety reasons. And we were just like, golly, what's going to happen? The coaches walked out at the end of that
Still
third
tied.
overtime period, 14-14, shook hands, said we're co-champions, and walked off the field.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still the longest time-wise game I think ever played.
Young man,
Not in overtime. There have been a couple of 8 overtime games, but
young man who's no longer with us, had 47 tackles. Preston Miller.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was unbelievable. Set a state
It was,
record for most tackles in one ball
the
game. Of course, he
last-
played 2 ball games that night.
the entire fourth quarter of that ball game and the 3 overtime quarters were played between the 40-yard lines. They never got past the 40.
That's how muddy it was.
Couldn't
how
even
wet,
get
cold.
down there to kick a field goal. But
I
I was fortunate to do those games. I've done quite a bit.
Our night at Alma, Arkansas, 1981. It just, and by the way, you can still hear and see the game on our website, and it's available, on our Facebook and YouTube. It is there. It's archived, and somebody was telling David the other day, said, I didn't know Freeman Travis was on the air doing football. I said, yeah, he and Bud did the state championship game in '81, and David was a sideline reporter. Al Evans was in the booth with us. Kenny Black came along as a visitor. He was in the booth with us. It was an absolutely great night. We're going to talk about that more in detail. But, that has been such a big part of our life, broadcasting, and so much that we did together. But there are other facets too, but I do want to spend a little more time talking about championship ball game in 1981, because so many people are still with us that remember it, and so many people still get that great feeling. If you'll listen to that broadcast, I think you'll find out that you kind of get excited. We'll talk more about that though coming up. We're visiting with Freeman Travis on Remember When here on Cable 15. Everybody remembers the 1981 state championship game at Alma. And I have always said, though, that my most memorable game, my most exciting game is the week before.
Absolutely.
We're at Stuttgart, and Stuttgart has a heck of a football team. They're like, 11-1. And we're on their home turf, and with 6 minutes to go in the game, they're ahead 10-7. And we just haven't moved the ball all night long. And I remember Bill Keaty got his offensive line together, and he said, guys, forget X blocking and O blocking and switch blocking and all that. The guy on your nose, knock him backwards as far as you can knock him. Guys, give the ball to Billy Warren. For 9 straight carries. There weren't any big gains, but 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 3, 7, boom, boom, boom between the tackles. Touchdown. Newport goes up 14-10. You think the game is over. They return the kickoff back to our 17-yard line.
That's right.
Billy Warren sacks the quarterback 3 consecutive plays all the way back to the 50-yard line. Game is over. Newport wins 14-10. If we don't make that drive, Billy Warren doesn't sack that quarterback, chances are we never get a chance to play Alma. We thought we were going to play Arkadelphia. They were undefeated. But Alma blocked 3 punts against Arkadelphia and beat them 21-20.
The Stuttgart game was a better football game than the championship game. I mean, just as far as a pure football game. Obviously, the excitement of being there and winning the state championship, overrides everything else. But that game, I think, solidified in my mind that season. The heartbreak of the Jonesboro game was just lived with everybody, but you just had to forget it.
It's a 21-20 game, yeah.
Oh, we scored too fast.
Yeah, if we run out the clock, just fall down on the ball, we
And
win
then,
the game
and they had time to
14-13.
come back. But that Stuttgart game, and there's a moment in that game, and telling David this not too long ago when we were talking about it. I said there was a moment in the game that just crystallized, for me anyway, our doing ball games and both of us being old greyhounds and all that. It was during that drive, and there was a time where if we don't make this first down, this game could be over. And it was a Billy Warren carry, and you made the call, and it was kind of one of those Connie Alexander calls. No one else knows who that is, but you know, he twists to the 19, turns to the, you know, just every yard there was a description. And I was sitting there, and I could hear the crowd swell on the other side of the stadium was just washing over us. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, now Bud has absolutely made the most perfect football call I've ever heard in my life. Keedy made the exact right call. The teams are in it. I said, now it's my turn to make the perfect color analysis call, and I did. I didn't say a thing. I didn't say a word.
Yeah.
I said, you cannot make a comment on perfection. And that was it. And that's the way I felt at the time. And it was just such a great ball game.
I thought, and I have said on this air, that our broadcast of the '81 championship game was in part it's well known, of course, because we won. But it sounds so good even today, and I'm not bragging, but just because of your understated color, your calming influence. You know, I'm an emotional wreck during the broadcast. I mean, you can hear it. I'm all emotion. I'm so involved in the game, and then yet, you know, and then 3rd and 7, a very important down, Bud. You know, and I've said all along it was the best broadcast. It was the best color commentary I ever heard at any level on any football game.
I can tell you where I get some of that, and it came from my dad. And by the way, my dad worked at WPAD in Paducah,
Paducah.
years, which was part of how I got interested in that, hearing his stories. But I had done a ball game. He had heard me do, I don't know if it was you and I or where it was, but I came home and I said, well, how was the broadcast, Dad? How was the game? And he said, oh, it's good. So I knew something was coming when he said, oh, that's good. And he said, son, so what? And he said, people don't care what kind of defense they're in. I said, they don't? He said, no. So they don't care about that kind of stuff. They want to know where the ball is, how much time's left, and what the score is.
Down and distance.
And Grandma wants to hear her grandson's
Yeah, that's right.
And
don't say he made a savage hit.
Yeah, don't do that. But he told me that, and I took it to heart. And if you ever heard me ever do a ball game anytime after that, every minute or minute and 10 or 15 seconds, you will hear the score, you will know where it is, and you'll know the situation. He said, you're not there. So they don't understand. Now, if you get to doing college ball and things like that, you have a little bit more of
understanding
of what's going on. You may want to give them some of that, but especially in high school ball, they don't care.
No, in the old days, if you had a six-front defense, you stayed in a six-front defense. You didn't change your defense, you know. You worked maybe on 2 in practice for the whole year, 2 different defenses. So you lined up in the dead tee, or you split a guy out, you know. And just,
he said, your job is to give the people a sense of what it's like to be at the game.
Sure.
Not to explain the game.
You're their eyeballs.
Touchdown to touchdown. You don't have to explain that it's 6 points. He said, make them understand what it's like to be there. So that's what I always try to do.
You have to, how much time we got? We've got plenty of time for this segment. You have to have, in those days, you had to have a license to be on the radio. You had to have what they called a third-class operator's license. You had to go take a big test for it. You had to go to Little Rock to take the test. You had a big study guide this big, you know. You had to learn that stuff. What do I do, you know, in case of this? What happens if this? Check this meter if this happens, you know, because you're there at the station by yourself. In those days, you were on the air spinning records.
And can you say a bad word on the air? And the answer is no.
No, right, you know. And some of them were silly, like what do you do if the station catches on fire? And I was there one time the station caught on fire, and I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I crawled out. You're supposed to call the fire department.
Yeah.
I did get on the air and say the Cardinal game's being interrupted, ladies and gentlemen, because the station's on fire. You know, and they were listening to the game at the fire station, so they rolled the truck, and the station
actually,
had a pretty good fire.
Before you finish that, later in the ball game, the Cardinal game, Harry Carey comes on the air and says, well, we've lost the listeners in Newport and KMBY because the station caught on fire. Somehow it got back to him. That was
anyway, cool. You have to have this license. And so Freeman and I, it's a sad morning. The family has just been informed that Freeman's brother Mike is missing in action in the Gulf of Tonkin. Vietnam, and everybody's just upset. We're already registered for this test, and I went to pick him up. We were going to drive down. I said, look, we don't have to go. He said, no, let's go, and let's get it over with. He said, I need to get away anyway. I said, okay. So two brothers that we are, you know, lamenting the loss of another brother, and just driving to Little Rock and spending some time, some quiet time even, he and I together, quiet time you can imagine, and get down there and
I think we took a couple of cigars.
Well, we probably did. We probably did.
I think we did.
And a package of Kent's cigarettes or Winston's, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Everybody smoked in those days, it seemed like. We get to Little Rock, it's very tense, and everybody's nervous. And you go in there, and they hand you the test, and you sit down. And then you take it up front, and when you're finished, they grade it.
Okay, let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish this.
All right.
Because we both studied some, but like I said, the situation at the time was I just didn't much care. So we get there, take the test, you take it up there, and they'll tell you whether you passed the test or not. And I got mine, and it was 95 or 6. I think I may miss one little thing on there, and it's fine. And Bud takes his up there, and he fails miserably, just absolutely, and he is just devastated. He goes, here you are, so upset all this stuff, and I can't pass this test. And he didn't, but he'll now tell you why.
They gave me a test that was the mariner's test. It wasn't the radio operator's test. I got to taking the test, and it's talking about on the prime meridian, if you know you were south of latitude so-and-so, and the swells are 8 feet. Do you call the Coast Guard? I'm going, what in the world is this? And it was the mariner's test to be a captain of a boat. I don't know how they got it, how the FCC had it. They were the ones that gave the test.
That's it.
But that was the test I took. And Freeman said, no, mine was all about radio and, you know, and frequency deviation and all this other stuff. And I went back and took the test, the correct test, and passed it glowingly, you know. But that was terrible. I couldn't imagine. The guy finally told me, said, well, it looks like you've taken the wrong test. I said, well, give me the right one right now. He said, well, I can't do that. You'll have to wait 3 months to take it again or something. Oh, lovely, you know. But anyway, congratulations on passing the test the first time.
Yeah. You don't have to do it anymore. You send in a postcard, and they just send you one back.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
I don't know if you have to do that.
I don't even know if you have to do that anymore.
We're so far out of it. For the last few years, you have, after being in broadcast business all around and continuing to do some broadcasting up in north central Arkansas.
Yep.
And that's amazing how that's done. You're talking about technology, you know, and tell people about that.
Well, a friend of mine owns some radio stations up around Salem and Cherokee Village and Hardy area. We've known each other for years, and for a long time I did commercials and things for him for a long time. And he asked me several, it's been about almost 13 years now.
Golly.
He said, would you mind doing actual programs for him? Do the announcing for there's a country station and an oldie station up there. And I said, well, how am I going to do that? He said, well, we'll get it set up. And what I do is I just get on the computer. His on-air computer through the internet is tied directly to my home computer. And I just go in, and it's when I get it home every day, their daily log of music and commercials and all those kinds of things are there. I just go in there and record. That was the Stones and the Beatles here on the river, and there you go. And it I don't even have to send it. It automatically is in the radio station, so I can do 2 or 3 days worth of programs.
Yeah, you're listening to Drive Time with Freeman Travis, you know, like hearing the beautiful Ozarks. And
it's
pretty
amazing.
as opposed to the old days. They had to open that microphone and talk. So, but it's good to have that technology, I guess.
Well, it's a lot of fun to be able to do it and not have any responsibility for anything, because you know how that goes. But it's a lot of fun.
But,
and it lets me, it's what I've done my whole life, and I get to do that.
And you've still stayed in communication too here in Newport.
That's right. I'm the 911 supervisor. And the dispatch supervisor for Newport, which was also 911, but the 911 is for the county. So that's an interesting job. That natural curiosity that I had as a child that drove me into radio and broadcasting and journalism, I still have that, and here I can still use that curiosity of what's happening, what's going on, and help affect it. I've saved, I feel like I've saved a lot of people's lives over the last 10 years that I've been doing that. So it's rewarding. It's very difficult, and it's certainly not for everybody. Anyone can learn how to do it, but dealing with calls when people's lives are at stake, it takes a certain amount of maturity and will to sit there and be able to do it.
I still have one or two people, one in particular in Newport, that chides me every time he sees me just about. So I still remember when you got panicky, May 15th, 68, tornado at Oil Trough, He said, ha, 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 boy, you scared us all. And I said, well, where were you? Well, he had us in the storm cellar. I said, where you needed to be.
Yeah.
I said there were, 6 people at Oil Trough wishes they'd been in the storm cellar. There were 51 people in Nettleton that wish they'd been in the storm cellar. And I got some retribution, Freeman, a couple of years later. Well, matter of fact, it was several years later, but it had a big tornado over at Fisher. And people called me the next morning and said, thank you. So what for? I said, we had no idea the tornado was coming. We heard you say it had knocked out the Edgemont Bridge and was moving due east and headed this way. And it went through South Jackson County and right into Fisher, Arkansas, just leveled a great part of Fisher. And they said, if we had not heard you say, take cover, we would have died, because everything we had was just flattened. Said, we called to thank you. And that was worth all that criticism I got from a couple of guys. And,
It's,
and I always tell them, you may criticize me, but if you were in a storm cellar, I did my job. We got more to talk about. Freeman Travis is our guest. And we're just talking about old stories, he and I hope you're enjoying just listening in to what we have to say. Be right back.
Jackson's Funeral Home and the Jackson family have been serving our friends and neighbors in Jackson County during some of the most difficult times of their lives for nearly 60 years. As the third generation of this family to own and operate Jackson's Funeral Homes, Jan, Rhett, and Jerry consider it the highest honor to be chosen to care for you and your family during times of need. We believe the highest standard of care is achieved when people are given the tools needed to make the most informed decision for the benefit of their family. For us, there's no greater honor than to care for our friends and our neighbors in their time of need. The Jackson's Funeral Homes, the 1900 block of Malcolm Avenue in Newport, phone number 870-523-5822.
My dear friend, lifelong friend Freeman Travis is our guest. Freeman, a broadcast icon for many, many years in the state of Arkansas, well-known, and having broadcast state championship games and been involved in the athletic program here at Newport for many, many years, and a great Greyhound fan on top of that.
Absolutely. And that's, as this is being seen, the football season
we're underway,
would be underway. So, and new facilities and everything. This should be exciting.
Yeah, new stands and a new press box and AstroTurf. If you haven't been by the field, if you hadn't been to a game, get over there. I mean, we don't have many in September. We're the Road Warriors after the opening game. And but I want to talk a little bit about family. And your family. We talked about your folks and your siblings, but let's talk about you and Brenda.
Well, been married, and I'll get this correct, hon. It's 31 years this year was Brenda Metzger. And a lot of people remember Rex, and everybody knows Virginia that was at the revenue office for 25 years. So they had to see her every year or every month.
And a lot of people borrowed money from Rex legally at the Jackson County Bank.
In fact, I was friends with him before I met Brenda because he was a client at the radio station. They did Cardinal, the bank did Cardinal ball games and any kind of sport. So I had already known him and met Brenda through. But
it's my fault.
Yeah,
I'm responsible.
It was. Thank you every day.
You better.
But we're just a great family, and I have a son, Keith, who is getting ready to be 33, and he lives in Northwest Arkansas and runs his own custom tile business. And my daughter Kristen is married to one of the twins, Aaron Simpson, and a great greyhound in his own right.
Your daughter is one of my wife's favorite people on the planet.
Yeah, she's a sweet girl. And now we've talked a lot about some of the things that I've done, and I've been a radio station manager and a sales manager and a disc jockey and a creative consultant. I've had all these titles, but I am now pap to the little redhead, Lily, and I have found my calling.
Yep.
I've been okay at a few things and not so okay, but I got this grandpa thing down. She is, it's a wonder. People always told me, "Oh, it'll be different. You just don't understand." And of course, I've heard other people on this program say that too, and it is correct. It is absolutely different with the little grandbaby. But that's our family. Unfortunately, Keith doesn't live around here. I'd love to see him more. Kristen does. So we get to see them. We get to see them a lot. We've had a kind of a tough year up until now with Brenda fighting breast cancer, but we're just about through with that. By the time you're looking at this, we probably be through our very last treatment, and we're just moving on. I know this, and of course I love my wife very much, but she is so much stronger than I am. She just amazes me every day.
You and I are kind of that same boat, My gal of 44 years and my troubles last year and hospitalized for 3 months, and she was right by my side through it all, and just did some things for me that one human being shouldn't have to ask another one to do, and I didn't have to ask her. She did them, and I'm still sitting right here because of her. Absolutely because of her, and pretty good union. We just celebrated 44 years. Y'all had 31, 75 years. That's piling them up, son.
Yeah. And we're getting close to that 75. Too.
I was going to ask you just what do you look forward to in the future besides being pap?
That's a lot of it. I can't ever see not doing something, working or doing something. I wouldn't stay doing what I'm doing. The stress is really can get to you at times, running the 911 center, but I'll stay doing something. Still love to play golf when I can. The back holds up occasionally.
Yeah, you've had some back problems. I know 3 or 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, whatever it was, your back was just killing you.
Yeah. Well, actually, I got hurt when I was 5 years old in the snow on the levee when everybody used to go over to the levee. Go down the
remember when memory.
Yeah, in the snow, and I hurt my back. And of course, I didn't tell Mom and Dad. I thought, gosh, they're going to get mad at me because I was over there doing something, and I got hurt. Of course, I wish I had now, but I had problems for years and years and years. I couldn't play after junior high. I couldn't play football or basketball because of it. I could play golf because the golf swing didn't hurt my back. So that's why I played golf team for 3 years, and no one knew we even had a golf team when I was playing. We come back and say, "Hey, we won the match. What match? What? Strike them away." They didn't know, but anyway, I did.
Any final thoughts? Anything you want to talk about?
Well,
this is your life. I feel like Ralph Edwards.
Do I get a prize?
Yeah.
I thought about so many things, and we could talk forever about those things. But just growing up in a town, just thinking back on how hard our year has been, and people have a lot harder years than I've had, and
yeah.
now I understand that, having gone through what we have.
You don't have to look far to find somebody in worse shape than you are.
But so many people have been so kind. They come to help, and Newport's always been that way. Yeah, it used to be bigger at one time. Yeah, there was more industry at one time. Yeah, there's lots of things that are different. But even back then, when we went through our darkest times, when my brother was lost, there were just people there. What do we do? What can we do? We don't care what it is, and they've done that for us this year. And I really, if I'd been somewhere else, I don't know that I would have gotten that. But I don't know.
I have said many times, and you've heard me say it, that there is something about Newport. Every time I would get on the air or whatever and ask the people in Newport to do something, to give some money for something, they always responded above and beyond the call of duty. I never did quite understand. I've had people walk in that radio station, to give $50 to the youth baseball program when they said, well, this is half my grocery money this week, but I'll get by.
Right.
And I went, you don't have to do this. Give us $10. No, I want to do this.
There's part of it that's a Southern thing, and it is different than it is in other parts of the world. But part of it also is just the community here. You grew up in a neighborhood. I grew up in a neighborhood where you just knew everybody,
right.
And everybody, it was just family. I would walk into my neighbor's house. They didn't knock on the door. Just walked over to the Ponder's house and ate dinner with them. I'd show up at your house on Sunday night for many years. On Sunday, I had dinner over there. Just showed up. There was a plate ready for me.
Right.
But that's just the way people are. And people here, they do care about you. Sometimes you don't even know that they've done something for you, and a lot of people like it that way. Wouldn't change that. If I could be anywhere right now, I can move anywhere I want to, do whatever I want to do, but I'm here with my family, and you're part of it.
Thank you, sir. My dear friend, Mr. Freeman Travis, and you see Freeman out and about, tell him you watched him on this program, and it's my pleasure to have him here and talk about some of the old times and the great things, and our personal relationship, which I think is intertwined with a big part of the history and the broadcast history of Jackson County over the last half century. For Freeman and all our sponsors, I'm Bud Black. Thanks for watching. If you have somebody that doesn't have cable and you're telling them about these programs, you can remind them that it's available on the website at cable15tv.com. Some people just put cable15, .com, and cable15tv.com, and also on Facebook and YouTube. So it's out there in a lot of places.
A lot of other good stuff on there too.
Yeah,
I go there all the time.
Absolutely, and you can go to those sites and hear Freeman and I do the 1981 State Football Championship. It's a good broadcast, and I've had many people tell me, say, well, I started listening. I say, I'll listen to the first quarter, and that's it. And say, it's so riveting. They just kind of stay with it all the way through.
And we won. I mean, you can
26-14.
Still, every time I listen to it, we win.
26-14. It's my wife's cell phone number, so I can remember her cell phone number. Anyway,
now everybody knows.
Right. Thanks so much for watching. We appreciate it. Till next time, I'm Bud Black.